Okay, well, let's get formally underway. Welcome, everybody, to the first Technical Advisory Council meeting of 2026 for the Confidential Computing Consortium. We are an open and collaborative group here. Everybody's welcome to jump into the conversation and contribute constructively, just as you're welcome to join the open source projects and our other community SIGs. We also abide by the antitrust policy of the Linux Foundation. You can read about that on linuxfoundation.org/antitrust policy. Today, we've got a whole bunch of things to get through since it's the first meeting of the year. One is to just kind of reset everybody on expectations, including the meeting time and duration. We need to go back and take a look at what we did for funding allocations because the board handed us back a smaller budget than we anticipated. And then time permitting, we can take a look at our first TAC deliverable for the year that we want to get underway with. And then finally, we'll make sure that we allocate full 30 minutes for our guest speakers to talk about their approach to browser-based remote attestation. Were there any other agenda topics that people were anticipating that are not listed here?
Maybe the one from chat that I just maybe misread. Is there a slot where you want to have IMAC introduced, or do you want to do that as part of the roll call introductions?
We can do that during intros. Okay. I'm going to do my best to keep us in an hour. We'll certainly let our speakers start at past because that's the time that they were asked to be here for. And if people want to hang around after that and we still have things to discuss, we will do that. I don't think we'll be doing any voting today, so I'm not going to formally go through the roll call, but I appreciate seeing several here. I guess we unfortunately no longer have Yash on the TAC as Red Hat reduced their membership level. So maybe after the fact, Renu, we should update that.
Sorry, can I add something as an AOB, Dan? Which is if there's room, and I'm quite happy to do it next time instead. I've been doing some work on AVSs and policy, which I would quite like to discuss with folks. So I'll take whatever time you've got, and if we don't have enough time, we'll do it next time. That's no problem at all. But if we could put that on the agenda, sorry. It's only recently I've got it to a state where it's usable, so apologies.
Okay. Yeah, I think we got a pretty full agenda today, unless we roll into the second
Yeah, that's
hour.
fine.
We'll play it by ear how that goes. Okay, now is a good time to introduce IMAC, but really everybody, if you're new to the community, you haven't introduced yourself a couple times because it takes a little while to get to know people. We like to hear where you're joining from, what your interest in confidential computing is, and how you like to be addressed.
I'll jump in first. Oh, sorry, Roman, I see you have your hand up. Please go. I'll put my hand up.
No worries at all. Thanks, folks. Hi, everybody. I'm Roman from Red Hat, and I hope our reducing our membership doesn't prevent us to contribute still to Confidential Computing Consortium and to all of the things that we're doing here. So happy to be here. I'm doing several security things, and hopefully I'm not the only one from Red Hat who will be joining these calls and will be able to contribute to our common mission moving forward. So happy to be here to rejoin the group, and yeah, looking forward to collaborate with you all. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for joining, Roman. And just because Red Hat's membership is, let's say, temporarily reduced, that should be no obstacle to contributing. Everybody is welcome to contribute here. Alec.
Yeah, I'll jump on the tail end of that and say welcome, Roman. It's good to see that Red Hat is still eager to participate. You guys have made huge contributions in the past, and we'll welcome your continued contributions. So thanks for joining. I have a colleague of mine, Simon, I can't pronounce his last name. I'll let him do it. Who's joining us. I'm going to ask him to become the alternate voting member for Microsoft here on the TAC. So without further ado, let me just say, please welcome him, and he will be participating, I hope, regularly, and maybe both of us for the remainder of this year.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Alec. Yeah, so it's Simon Gallagher. So based here in the UK, been with Microsoft for about 3 years, but spent most of my career in kind of telco and financial services. I guess in terms of my interest in confidential computing, so like Alec, I'm part of the product group for confidential computing here at Microsoft. I'm a technical program manager, so I kind of spend half my time out with customers and our own kind of field doing kind of educational stuff, supporting POCs, and then the other kind of half of my role is doing some kind of back-end feature work. So been working with confidential computing since the early days of SGX in my previous role at financial services org. But yeah, good to meet you folks.
Where are you in the UK, Simon?
London. Well, I live in Bromley, but yeah, I'm in Paddington at the moment.
Okay, I'm currently in Loughborough Way, but I live down near Cambridge, the other side of Cambridge. So.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so we've met previously, Mike. I don't know if you remember, quite a long time ago.
I thought we had.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
Nice to see you again.
Yeah, thanks all.
Great to have you on, Simon.
Thanks.
See, one other thought on kind of came to mind with Red Hat is that we try to minimize how many things that we vote on. We operate on this ethos of minimum viable governance. So we try to mostly just build community assent before we move forward with anything.
Sorry, Dan, there's some other names that I didn't recognize. Have we moved on?
We have not moved on.
Oh, sorry, you're just talking about voting. That's what confused me. Okay, sorry.
Yep, I just wanted to kind of clarify, since there's a lot of new people, that we do have voting members, but we try not to have two different levels of participation here. Everybody's kind of on an even level.
All right, then I'll go next. So my name is Merlin. I'm a researcher at IMEC. IMEC is a Belgian non-profit research center. We're most known for our chip fab testbed. We collaborate with ASML and TSMC in order to have latest versions of their chip fab pipelines that then customers can come and test in Belgium. But I'm actually from more of a software department at IMEC. We're starting up, or we have been doing a bunch of research on confidential computing. Our interest in confidential computing is for a few different kinds of use cases. So we've built a platform in order to generate basically an environmental impact certificates for CPUs. But that requires information from the chip fabrication plant, from the chip designer, and from us, a bunch of confidential algorithms. And so none of these parties wants to share this stuff with the other party. And so we use confidential computing in order to be able to hide everything from all the partners. We also are looking at confidential computing for unmanned vehicles, basically protecting machine learning models from physical extraction. And as part of this, we are part of the Elastic project, which Mike might still remember, as he is part of the advisory board, where we also do a lot of stuff with confidential computing and WebAssembly. And so we would really like to become part of the Confidential Computing Consortium. Simply, first of all, simply as another avenue to get more information about this field, but also because we are thinking of maybe some of the tools that we're open sourcing, maybe then bringing them into the Confidential Computing Consortium if there is interest for them.
Merlin, that's fantastic. In terms of membership, please get in touch with Rian or Renu, who's on the call, and one of them will be able to talk to you about how to go and know about that. But it's really good to have you.
Yeah, it's fantastic to have you all on. That sounds like a great scope of confidential computing work that you've laid out there.
Can I throw in one question there, Merlin? Are you guys based also in Leuven, or are you guys based in some other location? Because I did my PhD in KU Leuven, right across your street, and we desperately tried every now and then to talk to you guys, but there was little interest back then. So if you nowadays do computational computing work, I suggest to cross the street and go to the university to talk to them.
We have people in Leuven. Our team specifically is based in Ghent.
I see.
But yeah,
I see.
we are very interested in confidential computing, both on NVIDIA's SoCs and on GPUs.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't mean it was before my NVIDIA time. It was just all of the security research coming out of Leuven, because there is collaborations going on. But go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt that.
Maybe I'll
I'll go next. And sorry.
Quickly, because I've sort of linked to Merlin. My name is Jordi, and I am a PhD student on the team with Merlin, working on a lot of the confidential computing stuff as well from Ghent University.
Yeah, maybe I should have mentioned that we're also associated with Ghent University, and so we also have PhD students.
Great. Go ahead, Zach.
Thanks. I'm Zach Slayton, and I work with Jordi and Merlin at Ghent University in conjunction with IMEC.
Great having you join us. Anybody else who'd like to introduce themselves?
Hi, my name is Artyom. We just joined the consortium. I'm leading the development in Modelo company. Where we looking into the confidential compute, and in particular, we're trying to build a confidential compute cloud. So I'm really excited to join the consortium and see how we can contribute to the group.
Yeah, welcome to the CCC. I was just reading the thread introducing you all to the leadership here.
Yeah, thank you.
Who's next?
Hello, I'm Ahmed Magdi. I'm from Meta, and I work on the Meta private processing stack. Yeah, I'm excited to join the meeting.
Hey, wonderful to have Meta joining us. So Meta is another premier member, and we'd had some challenges making sure that we could have meetings that aligned with schedules there. So great to have Ahmed now joining us. So Renu,
yeah, great to see you. Where are you based, Ahmed?
I'm in Bellevue, Washington.
Okay, cool.
Bellevue.
Thanks for making it so early.
Yes, thank you. Anybody else who would like to go next?
Yeah, I can jump in. Hi, everyone. My name is Ritika. I'm here with Equity Labs. We basically build technologies and tools for AI integrity. So a little bit more on the verifiable compute side, but a lot of overlap with CC for sure. One of our flagship products, which we will be open sourcing soon, is vComp. So yeah, looking at things like lineage and provenance. So a lot of relevance here. I personally work across teams, so across engineering, product, and business mostly. Keeping an eye on different standards coming out in the space and how we can be contributing back to the community. So yeah, excited to meet you all and see where all this goes.
Great. So when you're not using confidential computing, what techniques do you use for verifiable compute? If I can ask a question on the spot like that.
So I just recently joined the team this last week, actually, so I'm still getting up to speed on things. Could you be a bit more specific?
I wasn't sure if it was a cryptographic mechanism for verifiable compute, something like a zero knowledge proof or something like that, but certainly not important. Didn't mean to blindside you on your first week.
No worries. These are all a good refining questions, which maybe next week I'll have more info on.
But really hard
a lot of the time, sorry, Mike.
I just say to Dan, that's really harsh. First week, you ask a really, really techy, nasty question. Deep dive. Sorry.
No worries. Yes, ask me again next week.
Okay, purely academic interest on my part. Okay, is there anybody else who would like to introduce themselves?
I don't know if it's planned now or later. Rüdiger Kapitza, FAU Erlangen. So I'm at university. We will later give a talk. My student Luca will present. We are in the domain of confidential computing since 2015 with the, what to say, appearance of SGX. Before, we already had something like confidential computing using FPGAs. And since then, we basically looked at various techniques from the middleware point of view, system point of view, but also attacks. And so that we are generally interested, the group, in confidential computing using it in different ways. I also worked for 3 years, 4 years with Dfinity. So Dfinity is, maybe as you know, Web3 infrastructure, blockchain infrastructure. There I was interested and responsible for having confidential CVMs for hosting decentralized Web3 cloud or infrastructure. So I guess that's me.
That's great. I recall Dfinity absorbing a lot of cryptographers. Looked like they were doing a lot of interesting things then. All right. Let's see here. Luca, would you like to go next?
I certainly can. Yeah, I'm a student. I did my bachelor thesis with Rüdiger and also some smaller projects. So I'm not exactly a big expert in the field, but I'm very interested and maybe also looking for a PhD in the future. Yeah, I'm very happy to give the talk today.
Great. Well, I hope it's educational being here, and usually that goes both ways. So as people, bring in their experience, that's something we all learning from questions as well. Okay, well, I think we've gotten through everybody, and what a great start to the year, especially with the calendar confusion. So I'm going to go very briefly over reminding people what we did in December. We had a great tech talk from Dingma Alibaba. That is a attestation component of the Confidential Containers project. If you missed that and all of our tech talks are available on YouTube, and you can find links for that on the CCC webpage. I introduced a new TAC rule that we'll talk about time permitting in a little bit, and as well as the first deliverable that we intend to do. And then I asked for some help fixing up the minutes, and ended up fixing those up directly and moved on from those. So I thought we'd just do a little bit of reset before we get underway during the year with a little word association. I'm curious what people might think when they see this picture, what that might mean to them.
I would also add that this is kind of an American phrase that you may not have come across if you're not a native American English speaker, but that's fine.
Yeah, and there's no wrong answers here, but this is how I was introduced to open source, so I thought I would use this as a little metaphor to get things underway this year. So this is cut wood, carry water. And it's this idea that, you got to get your chores done wherever you're at. And in the open source space, it means that everybody is pitching in. And that might mean doing something that might seem small, like reviewing a pull request or submitting a GitHub issue. Or it could be something that might seem more prominent, like writing a feature or writing a document. But whatever it is, there's really no managers in a group like this. We're all individual contributors, and we will all each get out of this experience what we put into it. And this is particularly the case for our premier members who are assigned to be here from your companies. I certainly expect a lot of the community comes in to watch and learn by being in this setting. But for the premier members in particular, we really need direct contribution because we don't have a staff that's going to do this work for us. We can't just kind of come here and pontificate and hope that something comes out of it. So I need everybody who is assigned to be here from their companies leaning in and contributing to the work. And what might that work be? Well, over the years, we've done a variety of things, and we never had, at least I don't think we ever had real direction from the board on what those things should be. But coming through last year, and this is in fact one of the contributions from Red Hat from their previous board member was trying to really help get us to rally around a small set of things so that we can make progress on a small set of things rather than trying to go very wide and maybe not make progress on anything. So what this amounts to for the TAC is we have potential adopters for this technology, but there's not a lot of technical guidance for how to kind of drop in and get started. And so the board would like us to create some blueprint patterns. And so one of those, I don't know if we'll have time to talk about it today. I put up a straw man on GitHub, and the immediate action there would be go beat that up. Go tell me what's wrong about that outline, suggest additions, corrections, and so forth for that. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. If we look at the general responsibilities, again, for the people who are assigned to be here from your companies, if you're listening to this, you are already attending and probably going to be contributing to TAC meetings. So that point is maybe for some of our colleagues who aren't able to make it today. We're going to try something new this year, which is we have myself and we have Ijlal as vice chair, but we want to make sure that everybody feels like they can be involved in creating the agenda. So each of the voting members will take a turn helping us build the agenda the week before the meeting and running it during the week. That's also going to give us some continuity. So when I eventually win the lottery and I don't show up to these meetings anymore, actually, I'd probably still show up to these meetings because they're fun. Somebody else will have some experience running them. And I'll just flash forward to this slide and then come back. But this is the next several weeks of meetings. So AMD will help us for the first week of February, and then Google, and so on through our list of TAC reps. So everybody gets a turn helping out there. We also get project updates. So there's some predefined agenda for some of these meetings, but the rest is sort of to be filled in as we go through the year.
Dan, can I just ask on that slide, have you got buy-in from all of those rotating chairs, or do you need me to have a stick and beat them with it a bit?
Renu, I don't know if you've got affirmative responses from people.
None. I'm sorry to inform. Yeah.
Okay, we'll spend some time on that.
The responses from Alec. He mentioned that he's good to have the rotating chair for the mentioned time. However, a reply is awaited from the rest of the representatives. Yeah.
Yes, I recall Alec's enthusiasm. I appreciated that, Alec. One other thing, which is kind of like a step zero that occurred to me that, especially with a lot of new people here, you might not know, we have a TAC mail list. So if you go out to lists.confidentialcomputing.io, I think, find all of these links on the CCC webpage. We have a mail list. It is not a high volume list, so it doesn't cost you a lot to monitor what happens there. We have our governance repo, and you see the links for that down here where we have some of the material. TAC members are supposed to help make sure that our meeting minutes are accurate. There's not a whole lot of activity there. So again, low cost, and then similarly Slack. We don't have a ton going on there, but it's easier for us to make progress when we have, small number of words that need to be exchanged quickly.
Yeah, and I'd add to that. Firstly, that the mailing list even has a digest option if you don't want to be getting every single one. I do the digest myself, and there's no shame in that. And also, when we're sort of creating documents and going through them, we tend to do that in Google Docs or similar to that, which means that people can participate via that mechanism as well. So as we get to that, I'm sure we'll be making the most of that sort of mechanism too.
Great. Okay, so the board is in agreement with this. We had a joint session with the TAC members who could make it yesterday and the board members, and this is all to make sure that we all have the same understanding of this is the mission and these are the expectations. And so I'm excited for a 2026 where we're going to get really productive on these things. We want to get started with something tangible and that we can complete within, say, a quarter, so that we're operating at a good clip. And so that's this first straw man. We don't have time to talk about it now because I really want to get to our tech talk, but we'll come back to that time available at the end of the meeting or at the next one. I also really want to talk about our meeting cadence so that we get that sorted out. So maybe we'll do this real quick before we get into the tech talk. Can I get, everybody has access to kind of put up their hands. So we'll do kind of like a quick vote. We originally, what we were doing at the end of last year was a single hour every 2 weeks. And so that's status quo. But the idea of that was that we would do a lot of this work offline, so we didn't need to have, meeting time. I don't think that really worked out. So we could return to what we ended up with today, which is the 2-hour meeting that goes from 7 to 9 Pacific time. Or we could meet for an hour, but do it every week instead of having like a 2-week gap where maybe we lose momentum. So for people who would like to stick with 1 hour every 2 weeks, if you use a little hand widget to raise your hand, we can get a little visual rough sense of who's interested in that. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. All right, I see 1 vote for that, 2 votes. Okay. And then
there were 3 votes: Caroline, Rithika, and Roman, I think.
Oh, I gotta make my window bigger here so I can see everybody.
Yeah, it's a bit of a problem if your window's small. I'm having the same problem.
Say that one more time, Dan. Was that the 2 hours every 2 weeks or 1 hour?
No, 1 hour every 2 weeks.
1 hour every 2 weeks. I should have made that more clear. Okay, so 3-ish there. Okay, and then what we have today is the 2 hours every 2 weeks. This is classically what we've done for the several years we've been in operation. 2 hours every 2 weeks.
So can I say why I'm in favor of this?
Yeah.
I think that there are times when we really need to get into a deep discussion about something which can take easily an hour. And if you have any other things as well, that means that either is shunted out or we just don't get into it enough. And we can always cut short, and that's fine. But it's very difficult if we don't have that time to get really deep in stuff. And I think we're going to have, if this work goes well, we're going to need the time to do that. And that's why I'm strongly in favor of this proposal.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, I see about six-ish folks. And then last one, let's meet every week, but only for an hour at a time. Little faster frequency, but less duration. Anybody in favor of that? Going once, going twice. The least popular idea. All right, great. So I see most consensus around returning to what is probably already calendars by accident, which is 2 hours every other week. So we will move forward with that. I'll send out an announcement to that. And without further ado, we will get into the main topic of today, the very exciting presentation by our colleagues. And I will hand it over to stop sharing so that button, there it is, so that they can share here.
And just to give context to Rüdiger, I think I mentioned it maybe already in email, but most colleagues here are not academics, so feel free to also give a very quick rundown of all the nice work you did and what the context is and a little bit of side background on this, because I think to most of them, research papers are something they know or read, but barely write themselves in this group.
Okay. So Luca will do the main presentation. I will do the introduction. So it's about site attestation, browser-based remote attestation. We presented this work at the security workshop recently at EuroSys this year. And maybe Luca, you can step to the next slide. So the background idea was, in our case, I worked a lot on the various topics in confidential computing, but then I stepped away from my academic career and was 1 year in Switzerland and worked for Dfinity. And there we have the issue that we have a decentralized infrastructure providing a Web3 blockchain like environment. And typically you like to get a good user experience. So anybody that has a browser should be able to access such a Web3 environment. And of course, things happen simply in the browser. So you can get direct access to your smart contracts that are actually served by a distributed set of machines. And sadly, the browsers are not able to speak the native protocol of the IC. So of course, you could ask for browser providers to integrate a really nice distributed protocol to access your Web3 environment, but this is quite complicated. So you won't get buy-in from the browser providers. So the idea is mainly to have a set of distributed machines around the internet computer, HTTP gateways that take the requests of end users and transmit them and transform them to the Web3 IC protocol to access safely and securely the internet computer. Now the HTTP gateway becomes a bit of a complicated component, because the question is who is owning them, who is operating them, and so on and so forth. And so the end users have to put a certain trust if they go via the HTTP gateway in the providers of these gateways. So we were thinking about cryptographic methodologies or other ways to secure the HTTP gateways. In the end, one option that we came up with, simply we provided them as a confidential virtual machine. But then the question is, how is this confidential machine attested? So, and who is doing it? And how can we integrate this quite leanly in the browser? Again, simply integrating remote attestation in the first place into the browser is not a thing that we could convince doing, for example, major browser providers. So we first had the idea to have a web extension and implement it in the web extension. And we had something which is quite nicely for Firefox. For Chrome, it's much harder because of certain restrictions for web extension. And this work together with how we crafted the virtual machines to be HTTP gateways, we published in a joint paper in middleware 2023. So trustworthy confidential virtual machines for the masses. And then there was some follow-up work where we did more of a runtime attestation of confidential virtual machines on the container level, customized for certain users. That is the work from 25 that is addressed. But this work, both of works are nice, but they are not really giving you the full security you want to have with remote attestation from a browser perspective. The web extensions have certain limitations. Yeah, for example, if you have web workers and there might be connection interrupts and so on and so forth. So we had the problem that the web extensions are not totally sound when it comes to remote attestation, all kinds of difficile connection management. So that was the point where when I was back at university, I was asking Luca and saying, Luca, hey, we need to get into the browser and we need to fix the browser, so we can easily perform remote attestation from the browser side, along with some custom policies that the user can define, so you can define which virtual machines to trust or not to trust. And this is the work he will present today. Also, we went into a different direction. We said we might have the possibility that assume you have a certain number of certificates for a certain site, which you can collect via certificate transparency monitors, and you can validate that for all of the certificates that are currently on the market, there is a remote attestation result which is suitable. So if you have a service that is sitting somewhere on the web and doing continuously monitoring of the certificates and the attestation results, then with high probability, even a user who's not aware of confidential computing could get an enhanced security when he accesses a remote virtual machine. This is something we also finished with more or less, and it's currently in the publication process. So this gives you an idea about the background about this work we did. In the past, my research group was happy to work with people from Intel, with various companies, with Definity, and so on and so forth. So we are always happy to have exchange and collaborations with industry, obviously, because confidential computing is always hardware, software, and it has a lot of industry traction. That's also, I guess, why I'm here, and we are allowed to present our work at this point. So with this, I want to hand over to Luca, and he can give you the details about the actual work we did in this paper. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Rüdiger. Okay, so let's get into the topic. First, that everyone's on the right track, let's quickly rewind the concept of confidential computing in a few sentences. So the generic idea we saw is that the idea is to protect any services from external access and to make services, cloud providers or service providers host in the cloud remotely attestable and to remotely attest the security guarantees. But so far, this proved especially useful for outsourcing services to cloud providers. But there are several types of confidential computing available. One are enclave-based approaches, and the second are confidential virtual machines. One of those is AMD SEV SNP, and we based our work on that. The nice thing about confidential virtual machines, we think, is that they are more accessible since you can protect whole VMs, which makes it easier to migrate existing services to that. But however, site attestation is applicable to all forms of confidential computing. The status quo is that service providers often host their services in the cloud, and the service owner can protect its service from privileged systems like the host OS or the hypervisor through confidential computing. However, security guarantees on the user side are far less extensive. With HTTPS, it is ensured that the connection terminates at the owner's VM and data in transit is protected. But apart from that, users have no security guarantees. They can't know if a service is trustworthy or hosts malicious code. Thus, users must rely on the domain's reputation. And because of this, we think end users who can currently not access remote attestation due to, for example, missing technical know-how could greatly benefit of the security guarantees of confidential computing like remote attestation. Though there are a couple of challenges to face to integrate remote attestation into a browser, which makes it easier usable for users. The first one is, how can a browser identify websites protected by confidential computing, and could there be a standard way? The second one, how can users validate attestation reports for remote attestation? And the third one, how could users interpret the validation results? Let's quickly cover how AMD SEV SNP, which we use for our implementation, works. Every SEV SNP capable machine hosts the secure processor. It is used to integrity protect the CVMs from privileged entities like the hypervisor by encrypting the CVM's memory and registers. And in addition, it takes a measurement of the CVM's initial state on deployment. This measurement can be requested from the CVM by a remote party alongside any user-defined data from within the CVM in the form of a signed attestation report, and by externally providing data that is then expected as the user-defined data in such an attestation report. External actors can force newly generated attestation reports. So, for example, you can provide a nonce, which is then expected in the attestation report, which means that the attestation report had to be generated freshly And if the CVM is configured with full disk encryption and by omitting any interfaces for reconfiguration like SSH, the CVM's state is fully protected and cannot substantially deviate from the initial state that is included in the attestation report. Thus, a CVM is considered sealed. When combining this with publicly available source code and a deterministic build process for the CVM, the measurement can be reproduced externally, which makes the CVM state remotely attestable. But how do we exactly request the attestation report from a CVM? With site attestation, the attestation report is obtained as part of the TLS connection establishment. We use the approach brought forward by remote attestation over TLS, RATLS for short. The idea is to exploit TLS 1.3 handshake extensions, which enable the user to send arbitrary data alongside the messages sent during the TLS handshake. We let the browser piggyback the attestation request onto the client hello message alongside with any data we want to be packed in the attestation report for identification purposes. For example, the nonce I already mentioned. The server then notes the identification information and creates an attestation report for the client, which is then sent to the client via the server hello or certificate message. And the client can then validate the attestation report on its side and validate the identification information. And should a server not respond with an attestation report, it is deemed not to support remote attestation. So let's come to our contribution. As discussed, end users currently cannot validate or even see a CVM's protection, and site attestation is set to change that. We assume an attacker model typical for confidential computing. We want to avoid any access from third parties, but vulnerabilities of the application itself and side channel attacks are out of scope. Site attestation itself is built as a web extension for the Firefox browser in order to keep as much application logic out of the browser as possible, but we had to build a generic API for Firefox to make TLS connections available to web extensions, or the TLS connection establishment. When a user accesses any website using HTTPS, the browser will establish a TLS connection to the host using a TLS handshake. And like explained in the background, site attestation will then send the request alongside with identifying information to the host via a handshake extension. In our case, the identifying information can be one of two types. Either the client sends a nonce, which then has to be included in the attestation report. We call this instant freshness, since the attestation report, like I mentioned, has to be generated on demand to include the nonce. And furthermore, always information about the TLS certificate is included in the attestation report to prove it was generated on a machine that has the hold on the certificate, preventing man-in-the-middle attacks. Though in our evaluation, we found instant freshness greatly increases latency when connecting a lot of clients in parallel. To prevent this bottleneck, if no nonce is sent, the attestation report can be cached by the server and will only contain the certificate information. In the case of instant freshness, like shown here, the host hashes nonce and certificate information and generates an attestation report with it, which is then sent back to the client as part of the server hello message. On the client side, the hash is created independently from the sent nonce and the server certificate received during the TLS handshake, and in proving the hash is equivalent, site attestation shows the attestation report was just generated on the machine the TLS connection terminates in. And the extension then notifies the connection handler and the user about the result, and the connection can be fulfilled. So that already solves two of the challenges we faced. The browser can now attain and validate that attestation report, but if the measurement included in the attestation report is actually deemed trustworthy is still an open question. So let's cover this. In order to solve this, we propose 3 security policies. The first policy builds directly upon the first policy is the exact match policy. The browser can be pre-configured with a measurement of the expected CVM's state, and should the CVM not send an attestation report, an invalid one or one with a wrong measurement that not matches the pre-configured one, access to the site is blocked with a warning. The second policy directly builds upon the first one, and we propose online repositories of trusted measurements. These could be published by the companies itself or third-party security organizations, and is a website covered by such a repository, site attestation can automatically validate the site's measurement with the one found in the repository. The third policy builds upon a feature of attestation reports, which can be signed by the service owner itself, and site attestation can be configured to trust such owner keys, and thus will trust any attestation report signed by it. If no policy can be applied due to missing pre-configuration, the user will be prompted to decide via a dialog. So that covers also our third challenge, and users in their commodity browsers could now benefit from remote attestation. If site attestation is successful in validating a website, a checkmark will appear in the URL bar, like shown here, similar to icons shown for HTTPS connections. And when clicked, this shows a pop-up with further information about the remote attestation process. Now we come to the evaluation. We had 4 evaluation questions in mind, 2 of which focused on the server side and 2 focused on the client side, or rather the interaction between client and server. But for time reasons, I will only cover the latter 2. The first one is, what is the increase in latency when establishing a connection to a site attestation-enabled website? And what about already established connections, so only running GET requests or general HTTP requests? For our baseline, we measured the latency of an HTTP GET request without site attestation, once including the connection establishment, which yielded 145.9 milliseconds on average, and once on an existing TLS connection with 69.5 milliseconds. We then ran the exact same HTTP GET request with site attestation enabled, and the results, including connection establishment, yielded 305.2 milliseconds for instant freshness and 242 milliseconds for certificate freshness. For the existing connection, latency was on par with the baseline with 70.3 milliseconds. And that's the important thing, that the requests for existing connections don't cost a lot more latency, as TLS connections are reused with HTTP2. We think the increase in latency for the connection establishment is very manageable and outweighed by the advantages site attestation hosts. So let's conclude. Site attestation proposes to secure websites through confidential computing and to perform remote attestation using trustworthiness policies while surfing the web. And with this, site attestation makes the advantages of confidential computing accessible to end users and reduces the need to blindly rely on a website's reputation, while keeping the browser quick and responsive with little latency increase. And since this is an industry talk, let's quickly cover opportunities for the industry. The first and most important action would be to extend major browsers with a general API that allows browser extensions access to TLS connections, and furthermore, build a standard for remote attestation in the browser, which could then be implemented by various browser extensions by industry or by the community. The whole project, including the patched Firefox browser, the patched Nginx, HTTP-perf, which we use for evaluation, and the web extension itself can be found on GitHub. Thank you for your attention. Oh, I oversaw the hand. Fritz.
No, I was just queuing.
Okay, okay.
Thanks for the presentation. Then it's fine if I just immediately start, right, with questions.
We've got quite a few questions in the chat, so
yeah,
this is good.
So I was just wanted to go first because I was realizing mid talks that I was throwing you into the sharks pool here with letting you run into attested TLS discussions without prepping you about the context. So the CCC has also special interest groups, and one of those special interest groups is the attestation SIG. And I think for over a year, there have been endless discussions on attested TLS in terms of pre-handshake attestation, like combined handshake attestation or post-handshake attestation, etc. And so that's just what was the context that I wanted to give you, and then ping back the question from chat directly to you so you can like precede any of these questions. Does your extension care at all about what TLS protocol or embedding of the attestation into the TLS protocol choice you make? Or in the end, you don't care, and for you, it's just an implementation decision on what TLS ends up being, and for you, the whole package around it is important, because I believe it's a letter, but I want to give this to you.
So you mean the implementation of TLS in form of OpenSSL, or?
So there's, I think, around like 7 or 8 implementation or protocols nowadays on whether you do attestation before TLS, or in contrast to then doing first TLS and then doing the attestation, right? Kind of the interplay between attestation and TLS. Do you embed it? Do you do it before, after handshake, etc., etc.?
Okay.
But so does it matter at all to you what you end up picking, or did you just pick any one of those that sounded good to you at the time?
I think we picked the one that sounded the best at the time and which was like the easiest to implement. And what is implemented is like during the handshake to run the attestation, because that is also kind of important for the implementation, because if you do it after the handshake, you can't cancel the handshake. So the extension is set up to, if the validation of the attestation report doesn't work out, or if the user doesn't trust the website, then the TLS handshake is canceled and the connection won't be established. So you will never actually connect to a server that is not deemed trustworthy.
But from your engine perspective, that's just a choice of implementation, right? In terms of like, you could also cancel it after not reaching the final attestation, right? That's just a browser choice of like when it's canceled. Just, and then I'll yield.
It sounds like there may be a UX issue here, right? It's going to be confusing to the user if they create a handshake and then the attestation fails because you think you've got part way through. Is that my understanding, Luca?
Yeah, that's kind of the idea, you might say. But Rüdiger,
I think the general feeling and direction of the attestation SIG is probably that post attestation is securer and the preferred approach. There's a link actually in the chat to some information around that you may find interesting, because I think it might be worth looking at that and then seeing what that does in terms of implementation and in terms of UX as well. And as Dan points out, we have another meeting on the 27th of that SIG, and you may be interested to come along. You may be interested to watch the videos of the last couple of SIGs, maybe, which are there.
Maybe one thing I can say about this, because I mean, for the different papers that I referenced in the beginning, we did various variants. Yeah, we looked at what original paper from Intel. Then, of course, in the first pass we first let the TLS connection establish, and then we're doing the attestation report exchange. That was one way, and then we decided to go with the handshake, because it seems to be that for browsers and so on, connection establish time is crucial. So because you have so many and so often, so you want to be fast. So that was why we said, okay, let's go with the user extensions, because we want to have a connection as fast as possible and not delay it. And then that would be another ping pong. And that's why I guess I suggested to Luca, we don't go through the tunnel, do it while we establish the tunnel. That was the thinking at that
I
time.
absolutely see the reasons for the decision. I think that is an entirely appropriate reason. I think what I'm saying is there's further research that could be done to see what impact that has, and what other trade-offs we should be making. Because you're quite right, that's a major issue, timeliness for human browsers particularly. But if we start thinking about what does this mean for agentic AI and browser-type browsing, there's another question again. So I have another question which I was thinking of, if I may, Dan. I know there's other people. Dan, do you want to put yours in, or mine kind of is related, but shall I do mine, or up to you?
Go ahead.
Okay, so my other one is about rekeying, and people don't think enough about TLS and rekeying. It allows you to rekey, and it allows you to specify when you're going to rekey. And it occurs to me that actually there are times when you might, as a client, wish to rekey, because what you want to force is another attestation measurement. And so that's actually a really interesting thing to be able to say from a browser. I actually want to basically remeasure and to use TLS native capabilities to do that, rather than having to do it via another channel. And so, I mean, this may be beyond your initial thinking, but I'd be really interested to know if that sounds like that's something that's of interest to you to examine or to investigate.
To be honest, I don't really know what rekeying in this context means.
So you can basically do another handshake. You can force another handshake, and it can be forced by the client, and I think also by the server. So yeah.
So, okay. But usually I thought that rekeying involves that the connection is not really terminated. The connection and the cryptographic conditions hold during the rekeying. And if this is the case, then the attestation result should be, in the case that we pitched, still valid, because at least for confidential virtual machines, like they have been used in this case, it's only the initial context that has the attestation, right? That's why also we make it a more or less deterministic box.
I would like. Well, I don't believe in determinism because of the Turing hypothesis, but there are times I think when rekeying may make sense, because you may be doing binary loading, for instance, into that, which makes determinism pretty impossible. And so I'm just wondering whether it's a possibility. It may not be, but I was just wondering if it's whether we can piggyback a forced reattestation over the protocol. And the answer may be no, because it's been 20 years since I looked at TLS properly. Well, 15. So I don't know what the state of it is, if I'm honest. Just a thought.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it could be of interest if we acknowledge, and that's of course a point, that the virtual machine will evolve. So we have patches, we have configuration changes, we have a lot of these kind of things going on. But then, and this is also in one of the papers that we last year published, is to say, okay, then we need extended attestation capabilities in the virtual machine, for example, for the context that is actually subject to the reconfiguration. So we have a base attestation and then a layered one, and so on and so forth. And if you have these kind of events and you know about them, then of course a reattestation is necessary, because suddenly the dynamic context on the other side has changed and the guarantees are muted in the worst case, right?
Yeah. So, and I would say one of the pieces of work that Dan is proposing that we do might be relevant to some of that layered attestation discussion you've just mentioned. So please stick around and keep involved. That's my questions for now. Thank you very much indeed, Dan. I do apologize for taking up so much time, but you know what I'm like when I start running with the ball.
All good.
Thank you.
Were there other people that had questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in really quick on Luca's behalf and say, Luca, you jumped into the midstream of a discussion that's been going on now for almost a year, where you jumped right into the middle of the deep end. Take heart. There are a lot of these presentations that get done here during the TAC where the question period comes up and not a single soul makes a single sound. Those are the hard ones, right? The fact that you are really getting engaged here is a good thing. It means that you're right in the middle of it. So keep going.
Enormously.
Good to hear that. Thank you.
It means we're interested, and interest is good.
All right. My question isn't necessarily for Luca or Rudiger to respond to directly, but just anybody. I think one of the assumptions in the early slides is that you can launch this CVM with an encrypted disk, and I feel like there were some replay attacks that have existed without a monotonic counter available, or some other mechanism to mitigate those. And I'm just kind of curious, do we as a community feel like, oh, that's actually a solved problem? Dan, go finish reading up on things you should have read 3 years ago. Or is this still kind of open?
I can speak for Microsoft on this and say that it is not a solved problem. It is a problem that is under active development, and that we are looking at, obviously, the different operating systems that are in confidential VMs and the different technologies. TDX and SEV SMP are the two primary ones. So we are aware of the problem and are working towards a solution, but we don't have any announcements that we can make yet.
Okay. If that's any of that research that's going on that is shareable on this forum, it'd be a great place to get more minds on it. I realize that some of it may be proprietary, but if there's stuff that can be shared, you will find people who will engage with that discussion. I am certainly one of them. So I'd love to talk about that.
I will again express my gratitude to Luca for bringing up such an interesting topic, and we'll commit to getting a tech talk from the folks here that are pursuing those solutions. It's going to be an add-on to the what is it, REFS, and I can't remember what that stands for, that provides rollback attacks and integrity protection for file systems based on BitLocker. So that's where we're heading in that direction, and I'll get the resident experts to prepare a tech talk at some point in the near future.
Great.
Thanks, Alec.
So maybe
Nicholas has a hand up.
Just a comment, regarding IBM Secure Execution for Linux. In these cases, you have the capabilities to have an encrypted image to start with, which is only deployable on that system. And with the latest generation, we introduced something which is called Retrievable Secret, which enables you from the outside to inject into our crypto accelerator so-called protected keys, which then could be used for encrypting your disk or your network backend.
Nicholas, to my knowledge, it's been about 5 years since IBM presented the architecture of that, and it's come on a lot since then of Secure Linux. And I would love it if you guys could present and tell us how it all fits together these days. I said it's been a long, long time. And I know there's been architectural improvements to it. So please, can we have someone from your team or several people from your team to walk us through how that all works, because that would be really useful too.
Yeah, we can do that.
See, Dan, I have the stuff for this year.
Could you just restate that though for me? That came at me kind of quick, Nicholas. The boot disk is encrypted and it's sealed with confidential computing. Was that what I heard?
It goes in further. The technology at itself works based on having, for the confidential VM, an encrypted image, which is encrypted with host-specific key to start with. With that, you can have an image only being deployable on a given host, which has a specific serial. We have other products in HyperProtect, which is building on top of that, where yes, the bootstrap of the Linux itself will create encrypted root file disks where only the enclave knows the key, as well as you can attach data disks for which you can create the LUKS encryption also randomized, but reusable in a way that you have several seats you add in your specific contract. Those are the things. I can talk about secure execution. I don't want to derail the discussion. I'm happy if Mike invites us. But I can talk about the technology itself, as well as how we use it for our products, up to deploying it on confidential containers, confidential VMs.
Absolutely.
And stuff like that.
But just to put this right, I mean, the point is to my understanding, of course, we seal to the identity of the virtual machine the encryption key of the disk, and the disk is encrypted. So there is no way, if you are not the right virtual machine on the right machine, to unseal the disk. Fair point, and this is supportable. The point is more that if I get the version of the disk 5 minutes ago, or 1 hour ago, or 2 hours ago, this is harder to detect. For this, I need monotonic counter. The monotonic counters are too slow, and at least in the past they were too slow, or they were exhaustible. So I could make so many changes. So at some point there was an overrun. So the only solution that so far you have, and there are a couple of papers and of course also industrial implementations, that you use a distributed service that basically does a distributed monotonic counter for you. So you get for each change on your disk, you have to ask a remote infrastructure. Another approach was asking the client, this is my latest state. Is this state really the state I should have? And then I identify a reboot attack. These are the two software-based solutions, but to my understanding, we don't have a hardware-based solution that really has, a lot of monotonic fast counters that are not exhaustible. That just from an academic point of view, this is my background in this question.
And to add to that, you can also argue and you can also create a system around not needing rollback protected file systems for a TLS certificate, right? Because you can argue that you get provisioned a certificate, you seal that, and then you can maybe have that revoked, but as long as you do not allow overwriting in your current state, or overwriting this in your current run, then any state goes, right? As long as you don't allow rolling back to no certificate, which is arguably detectable, then any certificate that you get provided is this certificates that you have, and you have certificates, authorities, and you have CRLs and OCSP, etc. for revoking this, but that's not in the scope of CTEE. That's something the client has to check anyway. So I think you can even get away without rollback protected file system for specific use cases. This may be one of them.
I think we have a thread around file systems and TEs that we should be looking into, because there's some really interesting questions coming up, and I need to see pictures. My head's beginning to explode. I'm also exploded by the fact that Rüdiger still has a VI thing on his wall when Emacs is clearly the preferred. But let's not get religious at this point. Sorry, Rüdiger, that's mean. Dan, sorry.
Yeah, just swallowing all sorts of responses about Emacs. All right. The other thing we're kind of tossing around loosely here is sealing. So SGX had hardware sealing support. To my knowledge, TDX and SNP, I don't believe they have hardware sealing support.
They do. Based on our research, they do. For SNP or SCV, it exists in a similar way, the same ideas. For TDX, you can use the SGX abilities, because any machine that supports TDX supports also SGX. So you can start, you need an SGX component, to provide that ceiling for a TDX TD in a way?
Actually, it's coming later this year. TD ceiling keys. It's
Okay,
already
cool.
it's documented in the latest ABI, TDX ABI that's on our documentation site.
Great. Oh, incident. I saw Simon put out like a LinkedIn post saying, here's the coming soon ABI, but there was not like a diff, and there were other versions of documents that show a diff, so you could see actually what was changing. So if Intel could produce that would make it easier to see what was new there.
Okay, I'll check on that. I thought there was a what's new type link, but I'll talk with Simon.
Thank you. All right. Well, that was
sorry. Just to be clear, to be differentiating here, which Simon are we referring to? Because we have one on the call, and I suspect you don't mean him.
No, I think it's contextually apparent to the person who needed to know. But that was Simon Johnson.
Johnson, right?
Yes, Simon Johnson. Correct.
Okay, I assumed.
However, if Simon from Microsoft would like to update the TDX docs, that's also.
I was surprised.
More than willing to contribute, but I don't think I could offer that much into that at this stage.
Okay, great. So this was a wonderful talk. Clearly generated a lot of good discussion. Really appreciate you bringing it to the TAC today.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Sorry. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, we still have quite a few people on. Do we have some appetite for looking at our first deliverable of the year?
Certainly from me.
All right. Let's go ahead and make use of time that people are making available here. So here's the strawman deliverable, and if we go out here, and I can paste this into chat. It's not important to me which document we start with or even what the outline of that document is, but it's really hard to get started from scratch. So the intent of this straw man is to put something out there to get a reaction, and we can make changes to this, augment it, delete things. It's hard to read something like this in a big group, but that's kind of the extent of the text that's there. I don't think we've got responses on it yet.
Do you want to choose one of those blueprints as a starting point, maybe, and take it from there and see how people react?
Yeah, there's a lot of different starting points. So let me just give you kind of what I had in mind. I was trying to look for kind of 3 different kinds of integration points that somebody might come in on. And one is where you're using probably CSP provided services, and those are going to be attestation enabled. And incidentally, I'm looking for things that are in production. So these should be easy for us to all write about. Ideally, this document that we put out shouldn't say, here's specifically how you do this on Azure. It would be some sort of generalization. So on a CSP or at a CSP, you would interact this sort of way. These are the kinds of things that you should think about if you are an adopter, the kind of things that you should look for. So the first one is I want to use, first-party services from the CSP. They are going to be attestation enabled. What's involved with that? So I used OpenID Connect token. That's probably not the right kind.
So one thing that came up in our discussion when this came up in the GB was, how does this relate to the work that's going on in the TWI, the Trustworthy Working Identity Group? And Dan had the perfect answer, which was that is kind of future work. And what we're looking to do here is, whether it's OpenID or not, we want to have something that you can, as he's just said, point to existing implementations or known good and known bad guides, good approaches and bad approaches. That doesn't mean that the stuff we're doing in TWI group is not important. It absolutely is, and it's aimed at something slightly different. But getting something that we can point people to and say, look, here's a way of doing this important thing that will work now is of huge benefit in terms of dealing with the problem that's at the top of the issue document. Is that a fair summary, Dan, of your view? See you, Dan. See you, Alec.
Yeah, that's correct. So we're working with what's available today, is the main idea. And maybe the text for this is very brief. It might be that, hey, CSPs offer these things and you just need to know to check a box. I mean, I think it'll probably be a little bit more involved with that, but we want to speak to potential adopters in this document. Simon?
Yeah, I was going to say, whilst what I have is obviously very Azure focused, right? I essentially have A and B implementation guides or examples for doing that on Azure. Now, it's not beyond the realm's possibility to kind of genericize some of that. I think we could probably, it's just abstracting up the concepts, right? The code and everything I've got written for that is obviously driven specifically for Azure resources, but it wouldn't be that difficult, I think, to take that up one level into a kind of concepts doc, if that's what you're looking for there.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, I'm more than happy to have a crack at this. Like I say, I've got the bulk of it. It's just a bit of translation required.
Yeah, and I'd love to explain why it's important and stuff as well as part of that, which may or may not be part of your docs already. Sorry, Nicholas, I jumped in front of you. I apologize.
I was just curious on the Blueprint B. For me, the CNCF Trusty project seems to be a community work which is closely working on secure key release across technologies, including the CVMs as well as confidential containers kind of things, as far as I know. It's supported, and it is also Intel, AMD, IBM Secure Execution. And it's independent of any Azure or whatever.
Yeah.
Do we have anyone? Sorry, Dan.
Yeah, I was just saying that's a great example. That's a good open source thing, so it's fair to talk about it in detail in the document. It would also be good because that in and of itself isn't necessarily a deployed thing. So talking about, I know Azure has adopted parts of Cocoa, I think IBM as well with Red Hat, OpenShift.
Correct. But I think my main point there is, the main point is the Trusty project is independent of Cocoa, as it is alluded. It is a generic to do kind of like the remote attestation flow and releasing secure keys, having KMS integration or KMS backends, talking to Intel Trust Authority, verifying other aspects. So that's why I think it's a good example. And there are out there, as you mentioned, documentations from our side. OCP, as you were referring to, is using it for their stuff, but also others are using it. And it would be also combining some of the work being done there, which is in the Cocoa, with the Confidential Computing Consortium, I think.
Yep. So I think the point you're making is that we got some very good material to start with there.
Yeah.
Right.
And there are other implementations. I know that Azure has an implementation of secure key release as well, right? I suspect that GCP does, and maybe other folks as well. So the more examples we have that we can do. Alex back. Hi, Alec. The better, right? That's fantastic. We want to genericize it.
We have published a way to deploy Trusty in our technology as well for on-premise use cases, and having the KVMS being more your on-prem HSM kind of thing, right?
I think Dan.
No, I think that's great, because one of the things that caught my ear there was on-prem. So we don't want to have, we absolutely want to have CSP examples, but also on-prem examples, give people a flavor of You know, if your goal is to secure your own enterprise, here's ways to use confidential computing. If your goal is to be protected against other tenants in a CSP, here's examples.
Nicholas, I forget who you're with. Sorry.
Sorry, I forgot to add my affiliation this time. IBM Germany Research and Development.
Yeah, great. Sorry. Yes, that makes sense. Given your previous
That's why
comments.
every other sentence starts with something with IBM, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. No, I too many people and too little brain today.
That's
I
fine,
apologize.
Mike. I thought you recall when we met in Vienna, but that's
Yeah,
okay.
we did, and I suddenly realized as I said it that was a stupid question, but now everyone knows, and you've been explicit, so that's good. Sorry. So, I mean, Dan, it looks like we've got possible volunteers to start on A and B.
Yeah, I think maybe a good, so there's two next steps here. One is if you want to just dump some ideas into the GitHub issue, that's a good place to grab some thoughts. The next thing is I'll ask Renu to create a world editable Google Doc.
Well, one for each blueprint, do you think?
That's a good question. So I was originally thinking of this as one document with maybe 2 pages per item there, but maybe it's better to have 3 separate docs.
I'd say so. I mean, they can reference each other anyway, but I think having separate things, because not everyone's going to want to know all about each of them, and we can also do a better job of promoting them if they're separate things.
Yeah, I think that's probably a better approach. So I'll ask Renu to please create 3 empty Google Docs, and then we'll share the link for that.
Are we going to have them as one GitHub issue, or do you want to separate that out as well?
I think we'll move quickly from the GitHub issue to the docs. So what
Sure.
has worked well in the past is somebody takes the pen and creates a first draft, and then we all kind of collaborate on refining that. And then once it is, let's say, 90% complete, then we can move it into Markdown in GitHub and do version track, get the final edits in. But it's usually so volatile in the first stages that trying to do that through GitHub is onerous.
Yeah.
Sure, then I'll create 3 documents and I'll share it with you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Renu. So I've got this other piece of work which I'm very happy to do now, or we could schedule it for the next time. Maybe it makes more sense to schedule it for next time and give people a bit of time back, because we've done quite a lot today. Up to you, Dan.
Yeah. I think that makes more sense, and then people can also see the agenda item earlier in the week and kind of get warmed up mentally for it.
Okay. I'll work with you to provide a description of what you want to talk about. So that sounds great.
Okay, great. So just quick recap. We've talked about a lot. Oh, there's one other thing that we should get to, which is, I don't know if we still have quorum at all. Probably not. All right. Well, I guess we'll have to come back to this next time, because I think we've lost most of the. No, actually, Zoom is just hiding a lot of the participants from me. So we've got me, Alec, Scott, Fritz, which is another NVIDIA.
This doesn't count as another quorum if the 2 of you from the same company.
All right, so we're a little bit shy, but we can at least talk about this verbally. So we can only afford one of these 3. We voted on 2 of these 3 back in November. And so the default thing to do would be to say Verizon got the most votes, and so we can continue to fund Verizon as we originally intended. But I did want to just be as transparent as possible and create opportunity if people would have reprioritized their decisions. So
we can vote on this over email if you prefer, Dan. That should be fine if you want to circulate to the relevant people.
I think I'll bring it up in the meeting, because I think sometimes those
sure, and there's no urgency anyway, right? So okay.
not a lot of urgency. I do want to get Verizon unstuck and move forward. And I don't want to revote if people don't feel like they have to revote, because that's just more bureaucracy.
Yeah.
So we'll bring it up again in the next meeting, give people a chance if they've got objections to this. But the default operation will be, we'll get Verizon enabled to get underway with some PM funding. So we'll hit that. Our next meeting, if we've got the calendar on here correct, is the 5th of February. So that'll be 2 weeks from now. We will meet for 2 hours. In theory, we will have Nathaniel vice chairing along with Ijlal and myself, and we will talk about this project funding and the document. I do not think at this time we've got a TAC Tech talk lined up.
No, and my stuff around a policy and attestation, I think, if that's all right. Bring it in there.
And then, as per the latest communication, since Ahmed is now the Meta representative, his scheduling has been updated here for 2nd of April, so that it is not a surprise, or I should say, as a shock for him. Yeah. Thank you.
Great, thanks. I think he is no longer on the call, but hopefully he sees that.
Speaking of NOx, on the 4th of the 2nd of April, there was a LinkedIn post about that recently. Someone talking about it might be worth looking at. So I certainly reposted it if you're interested in finding out a bit more about that. So someone done some work on done a security audit of it. So we got hands up. Fritz and Alec. I'm not sure.
Alec was first. Go ahead, Alec.
Yeah, just a really quick question. I'm assuming that for my rotating chair slot, that I don't need to be involved in the Grameen topic. I'm just going to introduce that topic, right?
That is correct.
Okay, cool. Because I'm not the liaison for Grameen.
You're hosting the discussion, I think.
All right, cool. And then and I can do this offline as well, but is there time during a single meeting to maybe do a tech talk at the same time as the Grameen project topic? Because I might try and pull in some folks that are here that can talk about file system integrity and rollback protection, and also SKR if folks are interested in secure key release as well, but probably the former, probably rollback protection.
Yeah, that would be great. So we normally have time for 3 main topics. We hold time for one of the projects to come in and give a report or its project proposal for a new project. We have something that we're delivering together, which will be this guidance doc, and then a tech talk. Kind of loosely, those are the 3 things we were able to hit each session.
Got it. Cool. Thank you.
Fritz?
So we're putting that down for the one that Alec is doing on the 16th. Was that the plan?
Yeah, that's the plan, but I need to get confirmation from a tech talk author.
Sure. Okay.
So looking at the schedule, I only realized that FOSDEM is before we each see each other again. At FOSDEM, we will have a confidential computing dev room on Sunday, February 1st in Brussels. So if you happen to be anywhere close to Brussels on Sunday, February 1st in the morning, please join us in the confidential computing dev room, where we have nice chats and talks about stuff. I can put the dev room here in the chat. Maybe...
Oh, put it in the Slack as well. Definitely put it in the Slack and even on the email so everyone gets to see it. That's a really good thing to share.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, we had it, I think, half a year ago on once we had the chats open, but I will put it in there again for attendance.
Thanks, Fritz.
And also, I just wanted to thank Scott that he also responded for the rotating TAC chair, which I ignored initially. So thank you so much.
Sure, you're welcome.
Scott's used to being involved with thankless work.
Oh, come on. We're thanking him now.
There you go.
Thanks, Scott.
Sure.
All right. We got a lot
really
today. I think I'm going to let people get to about 25 minutes back here, or minus a half an hour and 6 minutes, depending on what they intended to be here for. But either way, thanks for joining and thanks for collaborating here. And we'll see you in 2 weeks and constantly on Slack, Mail List, and GitHub.
Thanks very much, folks. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.